That's an obvious way.
I'm trying to think of some other technique of like practicing any. Oh, you're right. You can't see Neptune. You make clever ways. I like hear your fan screaming at the same time I hear my own laptop like just screaming.
Yeah, I have something in the background now that makes me not hear my laptop.
Well, that's nice. I hear it always, forever haunting me, always screaming in all of my dreams in the distance. It's what I hear. Can never escape it. Hmm. Forgot that Nick is here. I hope he's still alive. What's another interesting way of doing NE? See, the thing is, like, it's hard for me to try to get started or engaged in something, but once something gets rolling, usually I can, like, work off of that.
Hmm.
I guess when things have momentum. Yeah, like, if there's some kind of, like, a funny idea you can work off, and then you can just, like, snowball off of it and get more ridiculous.
Hmm.
Yeah, that too. Like, what was I was here this morning. I don't remember the conversation. I think she was here. It was talking about getting hit by a bus. Oh no no. Getting hit by a bus is like one of the top jokes. It's right next to explosive diarrhea and dysentery. I just remember that. Oh, hello. I don't know if my mic is bad. By the way, I have this new earbuds, and I didn't realize there was a mic attached to it, so it's probably horrible.
It sounds okay.
Okay. If there's any weird noises, that's probably me. Okay. For a moment.
I have no idea how my mic sounds.
That's fine by me. I just hear my fan screaming, but that's. I guess it's not being picked up. So have you studied much about what is it called? Not socionics. Typology. Is that the right word?
No, I haven't studied a lot at all. I started reading through like this past week or something.
Oh, so you just found out about it last week. Interesting.
Nah, I started trying to get deeper and actually see if there was more with it or something.
So when did you first find out about it?
I got a test on like Facebook 2 years ago. One of my friends did it. Yeah, I do it too.
It's
Mm.
interesting. I know I had it when I was way back in high school. It was just like a gym class thing. They only like spent one class on it, like personality development. They didn't even go deeply. They just like, here's a test. Okay, I got your result. Okay, that's it.
We had none of those.
Well, it wasn't even covering. It was just like, oh, take the test result, and then I was like, okay, that we're just sitting in like a computer lab, so it's not even serious or anything. And it's like, okay, moving on. And I'm reading mine, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, this sounds very accurate to me. And I never noticed anyone ever saying something like that I would relate to so much. So I looked into it after that.
Mm.
For the first like few years, I focused more. I didn't really read much about the other types or anything. I just read mostly about only my type and try to figure out, okay, well, these are problems and weaknesses. How can I make them better? And then I forgot, maybe I think around, was it 2 years ago, maybe so? Yeah, I started getting into like looking at other types.
Um, I read passing descriptions about other types, but nothing really deeper or anything.
What I found it really interesting for me was for the longest time, me and my dad, we never really had. Sometimes we would have like disagreements and stuff, or I would have trouble trying to understand each other. And I finally figured out that he was a like more of a thinker type and an introverted thinker. And I realized, oh wow, everybody doesn't feel feelings the same way I do. This makes more sense, and the more I read about it, it helped me kind of better communicate and understand my dad. It's like I'm arguing about one whole. Even my language and communication was completely different from him. He wouldn't pick up on any emotional cues or anything I would have, and I just interpreted it as him not caring. But it's just he couldn't recognize it or identify it. It wasn't that he cared. He did really care a lot. It's just his way of it was much different from mine.
Huh. Uh,
And same
yeah.
for him. When he gives logic or something, I would just go over my head.
I haven't had anything like that, and I don't know enough about this to try to use it in any way. Really.
It was only in the
So,
later years.
but like, if I had any trouble with communication, I mostly blame everything on myself that I'm not contacting anyone.
Hmm.
It's like everyone has to contact me, and I'd be okay with doing pretty much anything. But I'm not one for calling them or anything like that.
Yeah. Like there's times where I can go for a good few months without like ever really interacting with people, and eventually like somebody like my family will like give me a call like, "Are you still alive? You like didn't answer our calls or something like that." Or I'm really bad with my phone. I always miss my calls, so I'll go back and I'm like, "Oh man, I had it off, or I had it away, or I lost it, or I just forgot about it." And like, how can you forget your phone? I'm like, I just left it on my counter and I just kind of went off without it.
I'm pretty strict with my phone. I always have it with me.
And that's a good habit.
But I also have my mom who pretty much contacts me daily,
Mm. My
which
mom used to do
becomes
that,
kind of
and then
annoying.
my mom used to do that to me, and then she kind of learned from me not regularly picking up my phone. She kind of gave up. So now it's once in a while.
Yeah,
It's just
I
kind of over the
have
head.
compulsion that I must answer everything.
I see. Yeah, no, I get that. I just kind of
Yeah.
pretend it's not there, or I'll see the call and then I'll just miss it, and I'm like, let me go do something, and then I come back and I'm like, time has already passed. It's already been like a half hour. Maybe I'll call a little bit when I feel like it, and then hours pass, and then days pass, and then weeks pass, and I'm like, it's too late.
I take like no calls at all, though. I use text messages.
No, those I rather have that than calls. Usually it's calls. It's like I don't
I
want to
use
talk.
I ignore pretty much anyone who calls me. And if someone text messages me, I'm just instantly writing okay. Otherwise, it's like, they don't need my answer. I can wait, or I wait with this. I need to do this first if I'm working on something, and then I forget to get back to it.
Yeah, I forget a lot of things. Let's see, many comments here. Yeah, I don't know how to answer INFJ because that's like my biggest struggle is to express what's like going on inside my head. I have difficulty trying to manifest it because it's like so many different things, and usually it's not words.
Yeah, mainly because it's not words. I usually end up saying nothing. Nothing
Yeah.
goes on in my head.
Yeah, or it's like or someone will be talking and then they'll say something I relate to. I'm like, oh, I want to add something to this conversation, but I have nothing to add to this conversation except I know exactly what you're talking about and it reminds me of these things, and I have all these ideas, but my mouth doesn't know how to make words that make sense to humans.
I run into the problem that, and they already said everything that I would have to say about this, so I might as well just stay quiet.
That too. Or if it's like all the practical, obvious stuff, they'll say it, and I'm like, well, I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, I kind of have to continue conversations when we're all there just to give like the basics.
Oh,
I
really?
need a question. I need a question at end.
Question?
Need a question or some open-endedness to be able to say something.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. This is something I noticed for me. I forget this, like, this is like a tip I always try to tell myself in my head because I forget it often. Like, when I'm talking to, especially a new person, and it's like, oh, I don't know how to keep the conversation going. Because I know at some point it usually dies down and it goes into that awkward phase, and I'm just like not saying anything. And it seems like they are waiting for something, but they don't say anything, so I have nothing to grasp onto. Before that point is reached, I usually try to ask a lot of questions because if I ask a question, it's not like I'm saying anything, if that makes sense. And then their answers or their responses sometimes gives me like material for later, and I can maybe ask more questions and it might get into like find something interesting about this person.
That sounds like something I need to learn to do.
I just ask like, oh, I'm trying to think like what would I'm trying to think what a normal person would usually say. Um, I don't know, like someone will just mention something like, oh, um, I go, um, okay, I work in retail, so someone will buy a whole bunch of bug spray, and like, oh, you guys camping or something? And like, oh yeah, we usually go up to this lake and some kind of lake. I'm like, oh, where's that? Oh, it's up in like North Canada. Oh, really? Cool. How is it traveling there? I always just end like asking a lot of questions, and then usually they like do all the work for me. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like easy, a little easier for me. It doesn't always work, but with like more practice, I notice it tends to be a pretty good, solid tool for me.
It feels like an interrogation for me when you do that.
Well, I don't know. For me, I'm like, oh, what's I don't know. I'm kind of curious myself naturally, so I just say it out loud. Like I'll think questions in my head, but I won't say it out loud. You know, I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm wondering. Like, I don't know.
No,
And I
I
notice
don't
like
think I have that with questions that just pop up in my head. Yeah, during conversations.
yeah, and like I noticed like I read somewhere because I was really really bad with conversation and talking with people. Like I would be so shy. I would when I used to go to like stores, I was just a customer. I would try to hide from the workers because I'm afraid they'll say hi to me and I wouldn't know how to respond. I was that shy. I was really bad. So I remember reading a whole bunch of stuff about how to like carry a better conversation. And one of the things I noticed was like people like to talk about themselves. So usually asking them about themselves, they usually have no problem. I don't know. And when they say something interesting, I usually kind of I don't know. I find it interesting, so I usually kind of run off of that stuff. It's not all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like meh, but then sometimes you find out like I don't know, someone has a really cool story. I'm like, oh, that's neat, or I didn't learn that. Like I remember one random customer told me some fact about like when they have their credit card, they have to press a certain button. There's colors. I'm like, oh, can you press the green button? And then they tell me a fact like, did you know? I forgot. He said some kind of number like some percent of European males have color blindness after some kind of fact. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, that's interesting.
Random fact from